how does it actually feel for you to talk about depression today?
It's it's funny that once you've talked on a very public platform about stuff like this, which I did, for and once it's published on YouTube and you see the view count going up and you start getting messages on like Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn from people you've never talked to before,
Hmm.
that really takes away a barrier of talking about this kind of stuff. It's very freeing in a way. It's so I love talking about it now. Or love is maybe a strong word, but
Yeah.
because it really depends on what kind of mindset I am. So sometimes there's some parts that like hurt to talk about, but I still think they're valuable to talk about. Um, but it doesn't. It's a lot easier for me now ever since this entire thing went public.
So the stigma of talking about depression got less.
Yeah, I've sort of because anyone who Googles my name or looks me up, this is probably the first thing they will see.
The TED Talk, right? The
Yeah, the TED
TEDx Talk.
Talk, the TEDx Talk, and
Yeah.
that means there is no stigma for me because people will know. Um, so why not just be honest about it?
When did you actually know, looking back now, right, that you had depression or that there were signs?
I think science is always sort of hard. It was in high school I was part of this friend group that you would usually consider, the not very mentally stable group. Uh, ditched school to go, drink somewhere. Uh, listened to, the kind of music that you would expect people to listen to in high school when they're depressed. So like metal bands and rock bands and emo bands. Um, and I feel like at first it was just like, I'm having a great time. These are my friends. These are people I vibe with, and I didn't feel
Hmm.
like there was anything wrong with me per se. Um, and and then I think when you hit like 15, 16-ish, um, there were just some things about the inability to go to school, um, because you can't bring yourself to actually get up, and then you have to make up some excuse to your parents about, oh yeah, I have first period off or second period off. Well, in reality, you're just not able to get out of bed. Um, and
Energy
and
wise?
and energy wise, yeah. So that's like that it happens both after 4 hours of sleep, 10 hours of sleep, 8 hours of sleep, doesn't matter, right? It's not a sleep thing. It's just it's the start of the feeling of why should I why should I get out of bed? And I think once I sort of started doing that more often, I did realize like, oh, this is not good. Um, but in a sense, it's it was a very weird environment in high school. Like I said, my friend group was also the group of misfits, and they were having similar issues. Um,
Yeah.
so it did feel like I belonged in that sense. Where at first I was sort of the happy outsider, or at least to me it felt like I was the happy outsider, while all of them were struggling.
But no one was talking about it, right? Your friends,
Not a
or
lot,
were they?
no, but you can kind of tell, if you know people very well, especially at that age. People are not very good at hiding it, or at least not. I don't think people are good at hiding it in that sort of context. If you sit and drink together every night,
Yeah.
there's gonna be some very open emotional conversations usually, uh, and then people will give you a glimpse.
Actually, now today, have you talked with some of those friends about how they were doing? I don't know if they're still friends actually, but just curious now.
One of them is like I one of them is an ex-girlfriend I dated for a couple of years, and I still
Yeah.
talk to her every now and then. But since she's an ex-girlfriend, so of course I know her situation, and I knew it then. Uh, but I've also talked to some friends, and even friends that were not part of that friend group have reached out to me to say that they've watched my TEDx talk,
Hmm.
um, and they were saying like, oh, in high school I was suffering from the same thing. Um, it
Right.
was even more prevalent than this little group of misfits that we had.
Because I feel this is quite common in a way that, like especially maybe in high school, well, even after that, you're struggling with some mental health issue, but no one talks about it or is really opening up about it. And then, for example, like with your TEDx talk, or a person starts talking about it, everyone or many more people are also saying like, yeah, actually, I also struggled quite a lot.
Yeah, it's this. There's people feel the need to um, find people that went through the same thing, right?
Yeah,
And it doesn't make sense logically for a lot of people to put it out there on the table, not knowing what the response will be.
hmm.
So if someone else does it first, and you can say, "Hey, me too,"
Yeah,
um, it's the Spartacus effect,
yeah, it's true. I just feel like there are just not enough moments where one can do that.
where someone puts it on the table. You mean?
Yeah, there aren't many opportunities in a way.
There's
Um,
always an opportunity. Just you
yeah,
become
but
yourself.
yeah. But you know, your environment, right? In many cases, isn't really giving you those opportunities. You have to create them yourselves.
It's true. It's true. It's what helps here is so for me it was sort of almost forced upon me right through this entire TEDx process. Um, but I was reading a book by Dutch author came out a couple months ago I think. Um, and he wrote a little thing about how telling people how you feel and talking about your emotions that people will call you vulnerable like
Mhm.
you know that you're positioning yourself as a vulnerable person because you're talking about your feelings. And he likes to argue it the other way around. So he says, I don't think that talking about emotions is making yourself vulnerable. I think not talking about it makes yourself vulnerable because you will build up a lot of stress and tension if you don't talk about it. And then you just need a needle like prick and you will explode. Whereas if you constantly air out some of your
Yeah.
feelings, you become more stable. Which I thought was a really interesting way to think about it.
I've never heard actually that. That's cool. Which is who is the Dutch author and what's the book
Tim Hofman,
and the book title?
Goede Moed.
Okay, right. That's good insight. Can you actually see any triggers that kind of contributed to developing the depression? And it's mostly not just one thing, but more than, I mean, multiple things.
It's I don't know if I can pinpoint things that sort of triggered it in you know making it happen. Uh, but there's definitely things that reinforced it.
Hmm.
Um, so like I said, abusing alcohol in general is not a very good idea if you're
No.
depressed. Um, it's a very logical one because you want to drink your feelings away, but it's not a good option. Um, it's it's nice to be with friends who are experiencing the same thing because you might feel more comfortable to talk about it. But it can be very draining to have people in your surroundings who are feeling the same way as you. Um, this is something I experienced, especially later on in life. Um, this is what is this? I think 2017. For context, I'm a very big Linkin Park fan. Always have been. Like I said,
Nice.
rock emo bands, that type of stuff. Um, and in 2017, the lead singer from Linkin Park
Yes.
passed away, and
Mm.
I'm in the fan club, as are hundreds and thousands of other people. But it's a very close-knit group, and you can imagine that a Linkin Park fan club is also not mentally the most stable, group of human beings. And especially after something like this, I sort of immediately after he died, I felt like I was okay, and so it was like I'm gonna be there for these people. I'm gonna take care of them. And so reached out to a lot of people that I knew were struggling. I was like, hey, I want you to just check in with me daily, tell me how you feel, how you're doing. And so did that for about 10 or 12 people from the fan club.
Wow.
And that went okay for a little bit, but it was so draining, and it didn't allow me also to deal with my own
Yeah.
feelings around the situation, that it just spiraled me all the way back down, um, in the next couple of months. Um, so that was also sort of a reinforcing thing.
Hmm. Yeah, it's beautiful to be there for someone, but everyone needs someone in a way, right?
Yeah, and you need yourself as well. It's the
Yeah.
the, the classic oxygen mask in
Yeah.
an airplane thing, right? It's
You can't give. Yeah, you can't keep giving without receiving sometimes some oxygen yourself.
yeah.
uh, okay. Because what happened with the lead singer, Chester, right,
Yep.
from Linkin Park? How does that actually still affect you today?
To this day, only in a positive way, I think.
Okay.
So there was this entire sort of movement that came from his passing, which is Make Chester Proud.
Yeah.
That's what it's called. And I remembered the rapper, or well, to just call him a rapper is underselling him, but Mike Shinoda,
Yes.
he once described Chester as someone who would walk into the room and everyone in the room would be a little happier.
Hmm.
And I think ever since I heard that, and after seeing the Make Chester Proud movement, I've sort of taken that little sentence to heart. Like that's who I want to be. I think I want to be the person that walks into the room and everyone becomes a little happier, including myself. Right? That's an important caveat, uh, because you also need to take care of yourself.
Yeah. I feel like it's often that we need. I mean, it's beyond unfortunate what happened to him, right? But these are often how we sometimes move forward in life, because these are like big wake up calls to maybe start talking about our mental health more openly. But it's of course very unfortunate that we have to lose someone for that sometimes.
Yeah, I see it a lot more often, right? When it happens to a celebrity, um,
Yeah.
suddenly there's a lot more attention, which is good. Um,
Hmm.
and the thing about a news cycle is you can't always have it in talk shows or always have it in the news, because that's just not how the news works.
Yeah.
Um, so I do think it's good that if something tragic happens, that it's used as sort of a reminder that it is okay to talk about it, and it is okay to seek help if you need it.
Yeah. When you were going through that time, what were actually some of the hardest moments then?
So I think the one I just mentioned, with when I was trying to help people, basically it felt like it was my responsibility to keep these people alive, which is not a good responsibility to bear, by the way.
Wait, so while you were still feeling also depressed, you were trying to lift up
Well,
other
so I,
people
th-
who.
I thought I was fine at this
Yeah.
point in time. So it's always been very wavy with me. So
Yeah.
it's very episodic. in the sense that I think like during high school it was very constant.
Yeah.
So let's say from 15 to 18, 19, it was very constant, very present, and then it went, better for a while, and then it went worse for a while. So 5 months on, 5 months off ish. Um, and I was having like a good period,
Hmm.
and then Chester passed away, and then this thing happened, and that I think
Right.
that was probably the hardest time. It's balancing the external run, or it's not an external responsibility. It's because it's a responsibility I took upon myself, and like I said, it feels like I'm keeping these people alive. I'm not, right? I'm a guy that asked them to send a message to me, and I will try and respond. And I don't think it is my responsibility to actually keep these people alive. But that's
Yeah.
how it felt, and it was a huge responsibility to bear when I was not myself dealing with the grief very well,
Right.
and that was just that was a very dark period.
And if I can ask, how did you manage to go and move out of that dark moment? If it was one of the deepest.
I always say that the first time is the hardest,
Yeah.
um, which I know is not necessarily true, but I will keep telling myself that it's true because it gives me comfort. Um, it's once you've sort of climbed out of the hole, once you've seen that there is a path back up, and you can actually feel happy, and feel joy and be excited to wake up tomorrow and be excited for what you're doing this weekend. Uh, Once you have gone from the dark place to knowing that that's possible, I I fixate on taking it day by day,
Yeah.
knowing that if I just make it through, that's all I have to do. I just have to make it through,
Hmm.
and then this this feeling that it came back then, it will come back now, and I will feel better.
And how do you feel you're doing today?
I'm good. I'm really really good. I haven't had any episodes for I think 5 years. Uh,
Because if I like, so before we start recording, I also said that I used to struggle quite a lot with depression, suicidal thoughts, and I feel because it was also when I was like 12 to 18, that was a horrible, horrible time.
yeah,
But since I've spent so much time thinking about those feelings, feeling them so much, and I'm in a great place, right? I have a whole bunch of tools, but I feel because I spend so much time feeling those feelings that it can sometimes easily slip in my head again. But I don't know. Yeah, well, I don't know even what the question here is, but
no, what you're saying makes a lot of sense, right? I still see it as something that is present and part of me,
yeah,
um, even though I am doing very well by my own standards. And I think what I was afraid of for a long, long time is I consider myself a funny guy,
mm-hmm.
right? Um, I like to make jokes. I like to laugh around. And this is gonna sound, very silly, but I think it rings true for a lot of people. I was very, very concerned that if I were to get better, I would lose that, and I would lose who I was. Um, and lose, and that makes it so hard to actually try to get better. And now I know that that's not the case, right? I know I can still be funny, and I know I haven't lost myself or who I am. Um, but it felt like that for a long time, that was what would happen.
To anyone who's watching or listening right now who feels embarrassed to talk about depression or this feeling of maybe sadness or a constant emptiness in them, is there anything that you could or would say to that person?
There's a couple of things I would say. So, of course, first of all, you sort of have to accept for yourself that these feelings are completely normal, um, and they can happen to anyone, and it's not, there's you're not a lesser person for it. Um, it's I've always compared it to just, if you're going to talking about it like you would any other illness. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so, if people say that they have the flu, then, you don't look at them like, oh, you're a weak person because you have the flu. Or if they say that they have cancer, you don't say, oh, look at you, you should just, try and feel better.
Yeah.
That's not how people respond. Um, and it's never how they will respond if you start opening up about this. So that's one.
Mm-hmm.
Two is, um, throwback to earlier to Tim Hofmann's perspective on talking about this. It doesn't make you vulnerable. Um, in a way, not talking about it makes you more vulnerable, and talking about it makes you more sturdy.
Yeah. True.
Which I have noticed myself. It took me one big push out the door, very public, lot of views, and if you Google my name, this is the first thing you will see.
Mm-hmm.
But it allows me now to talk about my feelings a lot more openly, and that feels great. Um, so it's
Yeah.
it's very very hard at first, but once you get into the habit of talking about your feelings, it's a huge help.
Yeah. So this might sound a bit weird, but I feel like talking about your emotions is like going to a public sauna, where everyone is naked. In the beginning, when you do that, it's super weird. But then you look around and you're like, okay, everyone is naked. And no one really looks that much weird at me. We
Yeah,
all
no
look
one
the
really
same anyway.
cares.
Yeah, and,
Well,
and
not
it's the
not
same
not
with.
cares.
Yeah,
But
yeah. They might care, of course, but
yeah,
it's not like everyone has. I mean, most to everyone has the same spectrum of emotions that you're feeling, and will go through events through life that will, trigger some of those emotions to come up. Of course, you have different empathy. Not everyone is a great listener per se, but everyone has emotions. Is there any other, I don't know, piece of advice for anyone struggling right now?
I don't think there's really good personalized advice for this kind of stuff, um, especially because it's very hard, um, to follow up on the advice. And
Yeah.
if you fail to follow up on the advice when you're depressed, you feel like a failure, um, which you should not feel. Um, because there is a lot of things that sort of just proven to work, right? Go outside, go work out, don't drink alcohol, eat healthy, all that type of stuff. Which, I think even if you are struggling and you are watching this, you know this to be true, but that's not the problem. The problem is that you can't bring yourself to do it, and that's just perfectly okay. If you can do one of those things anytime this month, you're good. Eat healthy somewhere this month, and feel good about yourself for doing that and for achieving that. It's not a sprint back to the top. It's just crawl your way out on your own pace, and you will get out.
When did you actually know that you were making progress? Like, what things were you starting to feel, or what was, I don't know, different?
I remember a very specific moment where, um, I got really really excited about a video game that was coming out, um, which is something I didn't like. I hadn't felt that in a very long time.
Yeah.
And so I was already sort of starting to do better in the sense that I would come out of bed at a somewhat decent time. Um, I didn't drink as much, uh, just a little bit, and I didn't eat like complete trash. Um, but I did my emotions weren't on the happy side per se. It was just, I was doing all the sort of right things to get out of it, but I wasn't feeling the progress in my mind. Um, until this sort of video game was about to come out. I think it was like the week after or something, and I had a bunch of my friends text me like, "Hey, are we gonna all play this together?" Um, and I was like, "Hell yeah, I'm so excited!" And reading up upon the
Wait,
video game, and
I gotta know which video game.
this was the relaunch of old school RuneScape. Uh,
Ah, okay,
so
gotcha.
the,
Yeah.
the 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 backup of the 2007
Yes.
servers.
And wait, you knew it in that moment when you were feeling
I
that?
noticed that I was getting excited,
Yeah.
which and I sort of I caught myself and was like, wow, I missed that feeling.
Yeah.
I haven't felt this way in a very long time. Um, and so I don't know if I said to myself, I'm actually making progress, but it's in retrospect that was definitely one of the moments where
Yeah.
I noticed something.
Yeah, and I think this is in general also a good thing to know, right? Like recovery is not like one day from the other you're better. It's a process, right?
Yeah, and it's not only up either, right?
Hmm.
You can
Yeah.
go up and then slide right back down.
Yes.
And that's also okay. That's perfectly fine. In the end, you will go up, but it's a trend line. It's not straight stairs.
I'm gonna ask you a last question. What is one thing you wish more people would understand about depression?
I think we've come a long way in understanding depression compared to like 20 years ago. Or well, I shouldn't say 20. I'm 27. Uh, let's say 12 years ago, 13 years ago.
Sure.
Um, I I sometimes go back to my former high school because I give like a guest lecture there on how to give a TEDx talk actually. And then I talk to these kids, and they've all then seen my TEDx talk in preparation for it. And these are 15, 16-year olds that are incredibly open about their emotions and about the things they're struggling with,
Mm,
which really, really surprised me because it's not something I saw when I was in high school at that
same.
time. These people are like, yeah, I'm really addicted to TikTok. It's really taking a toll on my mental health. I don't know what to do. Um, and I'm like, wow, that's cool that you're sharing that with me. Thanks. Um, so that was not the question. The question was, what do I think more people should know about depression?
Yeah. Although I think it's a great insight actually to like we're of course there's still a lot to do, but we're at least taking some steps to make mental health more a part of the human experience and to normalize that way more compared to when, well, 10 years ago, yeah, or 20 or 30 for sure. So that's actually pretty good, I think,
But I
what we're
think
doing
the
here.
thing I would want people to know is that there is no one size fits all solution. Everyone's path is their own. Uh, you should not compare your own pace to others, and this also goes for non-depressed people. It's You should never compare your pace to others. You should always just take it at your own pace. Life is not a competition. Life is a journey, um, and there's plenty of time left to make the most of it for yourself.